on this rap-ish. I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list. Hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own. Tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers, and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues. Guess if you ain't at the table, you on the menu. And I'm that spitter, baby. They don't want you to see, but everybody's south of Capitol Hill's rocking with me. Boys smoke the trays and ponder getting their life together. I'm comfortable with my role, so I'm like, whatever. I ain't got a job, but I work hard. And you don't work hard, but you got a job. The irony is I'm judged while you feel the applause. I'm slept on, that's why I had to set this alarm. My dudes is armed, I'm armed with this arm charm. Body banging like she got that cream from Barry Bonds. Yeah.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
X-ray season is here, a real hitter with a mic, I'm everything that they fear. With that, hood ain't the same, I was all on their ass, I'm level-headed. So yo, my dudes love when I spaz, and I'm so over Seattle's passive-aggressive attitude. They don't call you back, what they really saying is F you. While I'm from the same place, I move at a different pace. I prefer if you just said it to my face, damn, I did it.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Average dudes with they average spit, writing average rhymes, knocking average chicks. The closer I get, I can feel the people starting to shift. I'm loyal to a fault, and everybody can't come with. Rap's a rich man's game, I'm only playing with change. They bang models and singers, I'm knocking my own flame, I'm different. The crowd, I move with the chosen few. Black thoughts, I could be the front man for the roots. No diamonds and gold, I'm on my sticks and stones. If we can see your panty line, you should have on a thong. My team is strong, through this fire we forged a bond. And they already know what it is when I get on. To the hearse, party like it's December 31st. When I'm on my deathbed, I probably cracking my nurse. You ain't got the bars to compete. I'm a verbal athlete, deflating these boys so they say that I cheat. Damn, I did it.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Yeah. I should probably start by apologizing for the long wait, man. You know, I know I be tripping. But I'm not just a rapper, I'm an artist. And, you know, my creative process is a little bit different than most. Nonetheless, I want to welcome everybody out to the Dre's Experience. I got TCF in the building. My whole camp's here with me. I got the band in here laying this cool-ass vibe. And I'm Seattle's own. Let's get into it.
We're in.
There we go. Welcome everybody to the Morning Update Show. I am your co-host, Trey Holiday. Happy Earth Day to all of you out there. You guys know we do this as a real team, and I'm excited to be with my team in the building. Big O, what up, Big O?
All right, so you talk about a team. Today it's going to be teamwork that makes the dream
That's
work,
right.
because our director, Alia D'Alessandro, is out today. Can you go to the wide here, Jake, real quick? And I'm doing some directing over here. Jake Grabrot is behind the desk with sound and lights. So you bear with us.
Yeah.
I just want to let everybody know. But how are you, Trey Holiday?
I'm good. How are you?
You know, I'm all right.
Yeah, you know, we got our earthy greens on.
I had to, I got a Mariners hat in almost every color. Yeah, I was like, I don't have anything green. It's Earth Day. Jake Grabrot was like, oh, you got this one. So, I'm working with it. Some people might say it's teal green.
I like how he said it's Northwest green.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said it's Northwest green.
Yeah.
So I'll roll with that. Good morning, everybody. Want to welcome you to the Morning Update Show right here at Converge Media, and remind you that right now is a great time to tag and share the stream. Tag and share the stream with people who you feel would appreciate culturally relevant news and information emanating from right here in the Emerald City. Trey Holiday, we got a good show lined up today. this morning was actually my interview time with Mayor Durkin, and real timely because we have Erin Goodman from Compassion Seattle, who we're going to be talking to here. So I asked the mayor about Compassion Seattle, but also asked the mayor what successes does she feel that her administration has had in regards to homelessness, and also talked to Mayor Durkin about participatory budgeting. I got a message before the show. It was like, you spelled participatory wrong in the description. It's even hard to say, but talk to the mayor about that. And of course, it's Earth Day, so we'll have a small discussion about that as well.
Oh, looking forward to it, man. I love when we have a great show lined up, and this just seems like every day is a great show, man. So I'm ready to get into it. Oh,
yeah, it's a lot of pressure, man. Because now, look at it, I'm trying to do this and trying to do that. All right. First thing though is we've been having this discussion about some of the changes that are have either passed both houses down in Olympia or proposed. And remember, I was saying that how Washington State is really considered actually out in front of the rest of the nation with a lot of legislation and everything else. This was a clip from CBS this morning the other day. Didn't really get a chance to play it until now. But they actually take a look here at some of the new proposed laws around policing in Washington State. And they talked to the former lieutenant there in the Washington State Patrol, a black woman who's actually an instructor now in the state police instructing facility. I think I said it right. Here we go.
Now, lawmakers in the state of Washington are trying to change the way officers do their jobs there. As Chris Van Cleve reports, it all starts with a new approach to training.
We've got resources, my friend.
Olympia, Washington police officer Javier Sola is in a new kind of training, even after a decade on the job.
Stay where you are.
The former Marine is practicing de-escalation techniques aimed at showing new recruits and veteran officers sometimes the best step forward can be taking 2 steps back.
If we slow down the pace, that will increase our options. And I believe that if we increase the options, that will decrease the likelihood of either party getting hurt.
And now the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission is incorporating active bystander training into this class and throughout its curriculum. It is one of the first in the country to require it for all new recruits. CJTC teaches new officers to take action if they see a colleague violating policy or using excessive force, with the goal of avoiding a situation like the George Floyd case.
Whoa, hold on, what's going on? Hold on.
Or this traffic stop in Virginia last December involving an Army lieutenant. Dozens of agencies nationwide are now following Washington's lead.
Really just empowering officers to step up and intervene, and then keep improving on the training that we are trying to roll out, this de-escalation training. That's the beginning of how you start to build trust, but it's a slow process.
Sean Hendrickson and CJTC train officers from 300 police departments across the state.
It's really about not getting yourself so deep into these events where now time starts speeding up and you're forced to make these decisions faster than you should be making them.
Stop! Oh my God, stop!
Last March, Manuel Ellis died after being forcibly arrested by 6 officers in Tacoma, Washington. They deny any wrongdoing. 13 months later, the state's attorney general is still investigating their use of force. Videos of the incident have raised questions and sparked a push for statewide police reform.
That training should have already been in place.
Ellis's sister, Monet.
I know that I can't go and murder people because I can go to prison for the rest of my life. So I'm not going to do it. It should be like that for officers, but it's not. So they need rules in place, just like we need rules in place.
In the wake of Ellis and Floyd's deaths, a dozen police reform bills are currently working their way through the Washington state legislature aimed at increasing accountability, banning some tactics like chokeholds, and requiring active bystander training for all officers, adding disciplinary action if they don't step in and report bad conduct. Nationally, many of these reforms are currently stalled in Congress.
There's this huge impetus now to get this work done.
Democratic State Senator Manka Dhingra, one of the authors of the legislation.
The vast majority of our officers are good, ethical human beings who want to do the right thing. They need those tools and that structure to enable them to do that.
But the group representing the state's rank-and-file officers worries the reforms will drive people away from a career in law enforcement.
This sweeping reform is going to have an effect, really an impact on the recruitment, retention in the profession, and also public safety in general.
It doesn't take a lot of bad policing to make the whole profession look bad.
After becoming the first black woman captain in the Washington State Patrol, Monica Alexander now oversees training at CJTC.
It's about being willing. It's about from top down, the top buying into that we need to do things a little differently. So if we're a servant, how do you serve your people? With humility, with kindness, and gaining their trust.
I think there are a lot of people in this country right now that would say police aren't doing that policing is broken.
I know a lot of people would say that, and there are parts that are broken, right? The whole car isn't disabled. It's just parts, and we have to fix those parts.
8 of those police reform bills have now passed the Washington State Legislature. 1 has been signed into law. 4 others are still pending. The investigation into the use of force around Manuel Ellis's death could wrap up as early as the end of the month.
Wow. I mean, it's a great thing. We talk about these reforms all the time, and it really is a great thing to see that Washington is leading the nation. One of the things that we've been saying here for a really long time is that we have an opportunity to lead. We showcase that with the ways that we had our protections around COVID. And I think it's important that we also showcase that around policing. It's a huge issue right now.
Right. And well, Washington, see, this is what I'm saying, is it's like, I always try to find some kind of balance or be objective in my viewpoints. And there's a lot of things we say is this isn't right, this isn't right, that isn't right. But look at one of the things here is that something happened in this state that's kind of supposed to be the way that it's supposed to work. Now, some of the outcomes people don't necessarily agree with. But what happened was people made their voices heard. It impacted local municipalities, then went to the state legislature. You can actually put a straight line between the Seattle protest and what's occurring down there in Olympia, like 100%. And so people also need to recognize that change can occur systemically. I know a lot of times we're like, yo, people are like, man, we just need to burn it down. We need to do this and that. We see here with our own eyes. And now I know I hear in the comments, this isn't enough. Something else needs to happen. That's fine. That's okay. I agree with you. But we also need to recognize that the energy from the streets ended up in the State House in Olympia. And I'm going to tell you, my travels across the country, Washington State is very, very unique. Very unique. Especially I went a lot of places down south, man, all the energy left in 1 or 2 days because it's so entrenched there. They know some things ain't going to change. When I was down there in Texas, when I was down there in South Carolina and places in North Carolina, yeah, they made their voices heard. They had no expectation in a lot of places of ever impacting state legislatures. This is something that's been fairly unique here in Washington State, and we can see the end results.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also really a testament to, so many groups that really have been lobbying down there in Olympia. It's important to make that connection. I mean, Paula Sardinas said it herself that, it was the momentum from the streets, that loud collective voice that really ushered in a lot of these changes and a lot of this new legislation. And again, the fact that Washington can lead is because there is that interim, right? It's not just that people got out in the streets, but it's also that people behind the scenes have been working.
They've been working. That's what I was about to say. They've been working in Olympia. So they was ready.
Yeah.
Preparation met opportunity. A lot of these guys been down in Olympia pushing this legislation. Like, see, the thing is, if it was just the movement from the protests, yes, right? But then it would be trying to craft legislation. It would be stuck in committee, stuck in discussions and everything else. These guys in Olympia, a lot of them have been having these discussions for years. Mm-hmm. And so preparation met the opportunity down there. You know what I'm saying? Because believe me, without the pressure of the protests, a lot of this stuff would still be stuck in committee. But even with the pressure of the protests, without those people working behind the scenes, then it wouldn't move how it's moving right now. So we'll see that. And like I said, this is rare, and people need to acknowledge that in Seattle. A lot of times people stay real negative on so many things. We clearly see people getting in the streets and getting proactive, and an end result there in Olympia. So, there are ways to change the system within the system.
Yeah, and
I think needs to be more change.
Yeah, and it's important too that's why it's like when I'm always saying, see yourself as a part of the solution, that's part of it, is that when you actually add your voice to this larger collective voice, when you find the ways that what organizations, what people are down there lobbying, how can I be a part of that? How can I make sure that I'm emailing my representatives so that they understand that I also want these things? I mean, it just takes it all. It takes all of us. And that's really an example of that, man. Kudos really to Washington State for being able to lead on these police reforms. They are necessary all over this nation. So I'm glad that we have that right here and that we can say we're doing something in the right direction. We're making the right move.
We're a bellwether state. A lot of things start here in Washington and end up going across the country. Real quick, let me play this clip here. I think we got Erin Goodman in the green room. We're gonna go a bit long, Erin, so we need just a few more minutes. I need to get this clip in. But I talked to Mayor Durkin this morning. Today was our interview time with Mayor Durkin, and I asked her about this participatory budgeting. Because it's just a lot of people just don't understand really what's going on. And I just asked the mayor. I was like, "Yo, is this money being held up by your office?" You know what I'm saying? Because it's like the mayor came out. She said, here's we all know the story. But now it's like, what exactly is going on with participatory budgeting? Are you obstructing participatory budgeting? What she says is that basically the hot potato lies with the city council. But I want to be able to play this clip right here.
Deputy Mayor Tiffany Washington, who I think you had on the program recently, laid out for the Black Brilliance Project and the city council options they could have. As you know, the city council, as part of that law, said that only they could release the money and they had to approve the final project going forward. And so when we got the Black Brilliance proposal, Tiffany Washington and others took it to look at what we could do. And some of the stuff they wanted to do, we just can't do in the confines of a city. And she laid that out in the program pretty well. So she sent a letter to city council saying, here's two possible options. One would be modeled as closely as possible on what Black Brilliance wants, which would be to hire a nonprofit to do all of that. And it would get X amount of money into the community. And the other would be to lay more heavily on city resources so you can get more money into the community as quickly as possible. There's a whole lot of structural and legal issues that she laid out in that letter. It's sitting now in city council's desk. They have to decide which way to go forward. And it could be one of those options or something in between. But they're the ones that are going to have to pass an ordinance to implement the law. And I will sign the ordinance as soon as they pass it and as soon as they figure out what this calculation. So we want to get that money into the community as quickly as possible. I believe in participatory budgeting. We've done it in the city for a while. So I'm hoping that, unfortunately, that hearing was canceled yesterday, day before yesterday, and it's rescheduled for next week, that city council can choose what they're doing. They resolve the legal and structural issues, and we can get moving and get that money into the community.
Ma'am, I just want to be real clear here and follow up with this. What you're saying is right now with the participatory budgeting process, there's actually nothing you can do, and that everything is sitting with city council. City council needs to basically make a decision as to how they want to move forward. When that decision's made, then you're like, yeah, you go ahead, sign it and proceed.
Absolutely. And again, we laid out pretty clearly two options, but they might want a different option, or community now that's had a chance to look at that. But city council, when they passed the law, said they're making the final decision. We're waiting for that decision. They have to answer those questions in Deputy Mayor Washington's letter. But I hope we get it passed soon so that we can get people working on that and get that money in the community. Because as you know, those processes take time to pull people together, to look at what the options are, to turn those options into RFPs. And we really want to make sure that I think it's really good because it gets more people invested. But we also want to get that money doing the good work it needs to be doing.
All right, Trey Holiday. It looks like the hot potato, according to the mayor, is actually with the city council. And so the city council needs to figure out what they want to do. The mayor's here on the record saying that she'll sign off whenever they decide what they want to do. It's a lot of misinformation, I think, that's out there. And I wanted to make sure and address the mayor, because if she was the one holding it up, we need to press that. But it sounds like city council is where it's at.
Yeah, and it's important too for the public in general to understand how they can be involved in this process. I think the biggest thing right now is that not enough people on the ground and in communities all over Seattle don't understand how they're going to be involved in this process. And that's really what participatory budgeting is supposed to do. And also, how does it usher in and center Black-led projects, Black businesses? We've talked about a very large need for direct investment in Black communities. And I think that that's really key here as well.
All right. So as usual, we're going to stay on top of that. I'm going to reach out to the city council because, it would be good to get the city council, someone, I guess it's Representative Morales, right? Morales or Council President Gonzalez. It would be good to get them on the record to see like, okay, well, hey, what's going on? If the hot potato was with them, then they can go ahead and let the public know that, yeah, it's with council. We haven't made our decision. We haven't signed it off, or perhaps they'll say something different. But I'll reach out to Dana over at the city council and see who we can get on the record talking about this. Next up, and by the way, people are looking like Omar is up and down. Alia D'Alessandro, our director, is out today. So I'm kind of live directing and hosting, and Jake Gravbro's running the camera. So if the camera's screwy, blame that on him. We're going to take a break here in a second. And when we come back, we have Erin Goodman from Compassion Seattle talking about what's going on there. You're watching the Morning Update Show.
I did it for the city, I did it for the love, I did it for the people, I did it for us.
Back on this rap ish, I ain't even broke a sweat, homie, this practice. Pondering my next move, staring at my track list, hope I ain't miss my window. Praying like a Baptist, Seattle's own. Tired of this Game of Thrones. They made a list of the best rappers, and guess who wasn't on? While the disrespect continues, I'm steady packing these venues.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.
All right, welcome back to the Morning Update Show. And want to say thank you to all the people out there, supporters, people making donations. We only stay on the air. Let me rephrase that. Let me say it better. You keep us on the air. So first of all, thank you. Appreciate you. Appreciate your support. Man, if you haven't had an opportunity to donate or subscribe or become a subscriber or a supporter, this is also a good opportunity to do that. You can go to whereweconverge.com/donate. And I can tell you, like, we really do a lot with a little around here. But the best thing is, Trey, before we move on, is like, we all know each other's skills. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody move camera, need to write a show, need to do audio, need to do this and that. Like, yeah, man, skill set is popping around here.
That's right. We have to be multifaceted. That's for sure. And it's something that I love about every member of our team, is that we can carry and wear multiple hats, man, because we have to.
All right. So let me do this here. Let me see how I can figure this out. I'm pushing these buttons myself today. We're going to bring in Erin Goodman. Erin Goodman, representing and working with Compassion Seattle. Hello, Erin.
Hi, good morning, Amari. Or actually, it's almost afternoon.
Yeah, good morning. Sorry we kept you waiting back there. I know we're a few minutes late today.
I was enjoying watching the show, so time went by quickly.
All right. So good stuff. Real quick, before we jump into it, I know you're part of the Compassion Seattle Coalition, but you also represent a different organization, right?
Yes, I'm the executive director of the SODO Business Improvement Area, or SODO BIA. So that's my day job. Man,
we're like 1-2 blocks from your district, because we're right here on Washington Street.
Yeah.
And so SODO just starts so we're Pioneer Square, but your SODO is like 1 or 2 blocks down.
Yeah, we are. We start at Royal Brome.
Yeah. All right. So, all right, real quick, if you can tell everybody, what is Compassion Seattle all about?
Well, I think to tell you what it's about, I have to tell you why I'm involved with it. I have represented SODO and the businesses and employees here for about 6 years. And as I have raised issues, said what's going on, I've often had the response of, well, what's your plan? What do you think we should do? And so when an opportunity to be involved with something that was presenting a plan came around, that was really intriguing to me. And so what Compassion Seattle is an attempt and a program to focus attention on the dealing with the issues of chronic homelessness in Seattle. And one of the key things that I feel, and we as an organization feel, is missing is services to help people now. Behavioral health and substance use disorder treatment services. We need to start acting like this is the emergency that was declared back in 2015. And while housing is essential, people should not be left on the streets to suffer while we wait the 3, 4, 5 years for housing to be built. We need to be acting now.
Okay. And I got a few things for you here today. And I mentioned it earlier that today was actually our day to interview Mayor Durkin. So I asked her about Compassion Seattle. So play 1 or 2 clips there. But one of the things early on, a lot of people were saying like, oh, wow, this is an alliance of who would imagine this alliance? Downtown Seattle Association and Chief Seattle Club and some everything else. But some people push back on Compassion Seattle, saying that this is comprised of a bunch of groups that already have existing interests together, and a lot of people who are already on each other's boards and existing interests and might actually benefit directly from the charter amendment. What's your response to that?
I would say that while there are some individuals and some entities that have worked together, that in many of these key issues, the folks on these groups have been on opposite sides of advocacy. And when we show up into council or to give testimony, there have been, wildly different opinions on how we should address this problem. And I think that's one of the key things that you see in this process. As I'm sure you're aware, we originally filed, and it was Amendment 28. And then we actually went and refiled. And we did that because as part of the process is really working and with these groups. And after that initial filing, there was some concern that maybe the language had created an unintentional side effect that wasn't an unintended consequence. And so we, in our commitment to working together, went back to the drawing board to address some of that language to make sure that it was, lining up with, quote, both sides. And I really reject the concept of both sides. I think that's one of the things, and I think the media plays a role in it, but we sort of have been told as a city that it's a binary choice. You can either be compassionate and care about homeless folks, or you can be pro-business and want clean streets. And I personally think that's a false choice. I think we should expect more, and we should expect that we need to be compassionate to the folks that are living on our streets. And we need to, as a city, expect to be able to use streets, because it's not either or, it needs to be and.
All right. Well, I remember SCC Insight, Kevin Schofield, the first article that he wrote about the Compassion Seattle Charter Amendment. In the last section, he basically said that when it comes down to people going for a charter amendment, that means that people have lost faith in the elected officials to be able to basically solve the problem. I posed that question to Mayor Durkin this morning. I said, well, with this charter amendment, does this mean that your administration around the issue of homelessness has failed? This was her response.
We probably spend as much time and energy on the issues around homelessness as any other issue. And I say up before the pandemic, we were actually making progress. We'd set up a regional authority because we know that homelessness doesn't stop at any border. And in fact, today in Seattle, probably 6 out of 10 of the people who are homeless that we're supporting were not living in Seattle when they became homeless. So we know that it is a regional, state, and national issue. Second, we shifted our shelter system from one that was basically mats on the floor that did nothing for people and was dehumanizing to almost entirely enhanced shelter, 24/7 behavioral health supports and the like. We invested more money in affordable housing and permanent supportive housing than ever. When the pandemic hit, all of the progress stopped. And we all saw what happened with the CDC guidelines and keeping people in place. And people, if you look at the maps, people started to come closer to where the services are, which of course makes sense. And so I think people are, it is the number one issue we hear about at the city of Seattle. I don't know about the city council, but in the mayor's office, that's what fills up our inbox. And I will say that I disagree with Kevin a little bit on this. I don't think it shows necessarily a lack of faith. What I think it shows is, one, the issue is becoming a political issue, and two, people think there can be a quick fix. There's no quick fix because you have to go upstream so far to stop the reasons why more and more people are becoming homeless. If I had to fix the homeless problem that Greg Nichols had, we'd be done, because we put more thousands of people into permanent housing than ever before. But more and more people, because of economics, because of the criminal justice system, because of the foster care system, more people become homeless. And so we as a society have to admit that there are a lot of reasons for people becoming homeless, and we have to go upstream and deal with them.
All right, ma'am, my question is, with this charter amendment here, if we go by Mayor Durkin's numbers, she's saying sometimes up to 60% of the people they're encountering aren't from Seattle. They're coming to Seattle or become homeless, and come towards the resources here. How does this charter amendment, Compassion Seattle, how do you address that? If the resources are here and people from outside of our municipality continue to come here, what in your charter amendment basically keeps people, I guess no better way to say it, from coming here? Or how do you expand capacity to be able to keep providing services for people that come here?
So I think it's important to note that when we look at the numbers, and the mayor mentioned this, it's not just that people are not coming from the municipality, but what we see is the region. People are coming from the greater King County area, the greater Puget Sound area, and Seattle's the largest city. And so that makes sense that these folks would be here. I know that there's a lot of stories about people coming from Texas or other places, and some of that is true, but the vast majority of people are coming from within Washington state. So maybe not Seattle, but within our general region. But that is why this charter amendment was designed to work in complement with the Regional Homelessness Authority. The mayor's correct. We need a regional approach for exactly the reason you mentioned, so that people don't have to leave their community in Kent or Auburn to come to Seattle to receive services. We need to act regionally for this problem. And this charter amendment, in its words, is very specifically designed to work in complement with the Regional Homeless Authority.
Well, I think that that's a great point. And, immediately I'm thinking about Mercer Island, right? And how they have chosen to deal with their own issue of homelessness and say, look, we're going to fine people for sleeping in parks. We're going to fine them for being in their cars. How does a regional approach bring in, because then people from Mercer Island are also coming to Seattle for the resources. So when you talk about a regional approach, how does that amplify a kind of more diverse set of voices, where there are some people who are dealing with this issue in a really kind of abrupt way, like Mercer Island, and wanting to find people, versus really absorbing homelessness as an issue that needs to be addressed by providing different sets of care, homelessness, housing, all of that. How do you see that kind of working in tandem as a regional approach?
Well, the first thing it does is that it puts the county and the city in alignment. And one of the biggest challenges we heard from providers and from others prior to the development of the Regional Homeless Authority is that, they had different contracting amounts and processes and metrics, and that, if one entity wanted to contract with the city of Seattle, they had to go through an entirely different process to go and contract with this King County. And so the Regional Homeless Authority is designed to streamline those. Now, as you're fully aware, the Regional Homeless Authority is behind. COVID hit, the mayor is correct that in 2019, prior to COVID, we could feel on the streets an improvement. We were seeing things, feeling that things were moving. And COVID really, it shut all of us down in many areas of our lives. So now the Homeless Authority has hired an executive director. I mean, we're talking within the last couple of weeks. That person has to have the opportunity to build a staff, to bring it on board. But City of Seattle and King County have gone into the Regional Homeless Authority with a little bit of the expectation, if you build it, they will come. Because to be honest, many of those neighboring cities have not signed on to this and are not, quote unquote, pulling their weight when it comes to dealing with what is truly a regional issue, but that has centered in Seattle because of the fact that we are the area's, largest city. But when you look at the numbers from across the country, that little Seattle has the third highest homeless number in the entire country, we have to act.
It's interesting that everybody says that, and which is true, that homelessness was definitely impacted around COVID. But when you talk to City Hall, they tell you there's so many complaints around homelessness right now during the middle of COVID. So I'm wondering where the COVID compassion for the homeless is at, So I had a question for you here. A few of them is, this thing's going to cost a lot of money. Where's this money supposed to come from?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, we already spend a lot of money on homelessness, but we don't spend it in an organized and directed fashion. I mean, if you look at the 2020 budget, we are spending about 11% of the general fund on human services. And then if we, the charter amendment adds an additional 1%, which would mean in 2020 dollars, we'd be spending about $192 million. And I think it's important that we take into consideration the fact that this is a prioritization issue, that we have consistently, like I said, we declared an emergency in 2015, and yet to date have never acted that way. We have relied on the last dollar in, on raising new taxes, instead of focusing on what we hear from the people is the most important issue. That said, there is also opportunity. So we believe if that money is spent and prioritized in an effective, planned manner, that we won't need as much more money as we think. But then we also know that we have federal funding. Close to $800 million of discretionary funds are coming Seattle's way. There are some other opportunities within the county to leverage funds. And, if we can move forward as a unit towards a goal, then if at some point it says that, there need to be new taxes, we can look at that. But I don't think we're at that point yet. I don't think that this city has shown a unified approach towards addressing homelessness, or that there's any sort of accountability in the system from the city's side. I mean, the folks that contract with the city are contractors of the city, and it's the city's responsibility to ensure that funds are being managed correctly. And I think we have a lot of work to do on that area before we go back and say we need new taxes.
Well, as you break down, the ways that money is going to be funneled into this, a real big question is, many folks on the streets have been like, man, there's been so much money thrown at homelessness, so many millions of dollars. And in terms of how Compassion Seattle is thinking about this, I think that there are some gaps there. And we've seen a lot of money go toward administrative costs around homelessness, and it doesn't actually hit the ground for those who are unhoused and unsheltered, and really provide options and opportunities for them. How are you guys kind of looking at some of that data and thinking about it differently as a coalition or a cohort?
So one of the things that we think is really important is that the city needs to be reporting to the general public on their progress. Right now, we hear these numbers like 192 million, and we look around and people like to do the math on, what that means per head. And that's not really a meaningful metric, but people do it because they're missing the information from their city. The city's not reporting. And one of the key things that we would like to see is outputs, outcomes versus services. You know, we would like to see the city reporting on, you know, how those dollars moved someone from the street into permanent supportive housing, or moved somebody through a job.
I'm sorry, let me jump in here real quick. Are you saying that right now the city is not being transparent in the way that these homeless dollars are being spent, and that you're not able to easily see the outputs, the successes or failures around the money that's invested in homelessness?
What I'm saying is that we do not see a coordinated, you know, everyone focused on a single goal, where the homeless providers are providing metrics, the city's providing metrics to the folks. We don't have that process. You know, there are entities across this country that are doing work and that very clearly show that an individualized plan that is focused on how individuals move through homelessness is what is successful. And we do not see that here in Seattle at this time.
All right, so I have another question for you. Here in Seattle, and you might know the numbers a little bit better than we do, of course, but they said that Black people make up a very small part of the overall population, but about 30% of the people who are experiencing homelessness here in the Emerald City. That being said, just that with that number alone right there, what kind of who else is riding with you guys? That was another thing, you know, when the initial releases came out. I remember I talked to Erica C. Barnett over at Publicola, who does a lot of reporting on homelessness. And one of the questions that she had, and she said that she's going to be watching, is to see who else endorses Compassion Seattle. What advocacy organizations would endorse Compassion Seattle? All that being said, how intentional is this? How's this going to impact Black people who are experiencing this disproportionate rate of homelessness here? And what advocacy organizations are you guys working with or is endorsing Compassion Seattle?
So I think it's really important to note that, you know, the first line is, you know, to look at the racial disparities, because you're absolutely correct. You know, BIPOC communities show up disproportionately in those living on the streets. And this is a function of systemic inequalities through generations, not just here, but we need to look at the very systems that are set up to help these people and how those are potentially impacting this as well. Whether, you know, the process of receiving services is a barrier to, you know, moving off the streets. And so that is very clearly stated in the charter amendment. And it was important, you know, one of the things that, you know, as Kevin mentioned, and we've held dear, is that we really wanted to reach outside of our group to understand from others that are doing this work. So talking to folks at Chief Seattle Club, at the Public Defenders Association, at Uplift and DESC. And it was made very, very clear to us that services provided through this amendment need to be culturally competent, culturally distinct, need to be focused on the needs of that person, whether that be culturally or religiously, whether that be family size, disability, or, you know, and that we really need to move away from a one size fits all to understand that, you know, distinct groups of people have distinct needs, and that there are as many pathways into homelessness as the individuals experiencing it, and the ways out of homelessness are going to be just as unique. And I think that that was something that was really important to us to, you know, in designing the work, and as well as doing the work to the city. We call on the city to do the work to understand why we see such racial disparities on our streets.
Well, as you say that, I think that it's really the question that popped up in my head was, this is really a diverse issue, right? When we look at the numbers of homelessness, we understand that there are many Indigenous folks experiencing homelessness and many Black families experiencing homelessness. How have you guys, as Compassion Seattle, brought in that diversity to really build the solutions that you guys are trying to implement?
So one of the things that we understand, and I think, you know, we understand this because we worked, I mean, I personally have worked closely with the folks over at the Chief Seattle in my regular work, but we also included them in the roundtable of conversation, is understanding how focusing on the needs of a particular group from the lens of that community can show success. Here in Soto, we host Eagle Village. It's a small, I guess you would call it transitional living facility that was started with King County and Chief Seattle Club that is really specifically focused on the needs of urban indigenous folks that are living on our streets. And it's showing a lot of success. It's been very greatly, welcomed by the Soto community. And so that we understand that you need that cultural competency and that understanding to make moves forward. This is the beginning. We haven't even gotten through, we filed, but we're still in the process where we aren't even starting to collect signatures yet. And this coalition of folks that have come together did not just come together for the writing of this, but also for the implementation. And that's where it's going to be really, really important to have those voices, because that is where, the nuts and bolts of this process gets made. And we have made a commitment to our activist partners and our, advocacy partners to stay together as a group through this implementation phase so that the outcome meets what we went into this with.
All right. So I'm going to challenge you here, Erin, and I'm going to say that when I think that it's important, I mean, Chief Seattle Club is somebody that we support here, and Colleen Echohawk has been on here plenty of times before. It's excellent work. They're actually our neighbor. They're right across the street. As you know, Converge Media, although we serve the whole city, we specifically target the Black community here in Seattle, the Central District, the South End, and across King County. So when you guys do have more advocates that are directly rooted in our community, we want to talk to them. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure that as you roll out Compassion Seattle, it's going to be difficult, not jinxing you, but it's going to be difficult to get buy-in across the city if you don't have direct representation from Black people who are experiencing this disproportionate rate of homelessness. I wanted to touch on another point, which is about legality. Do you anticipate any legal challenges to this? I know that with what was this guy? Iman. One of the things they talk about is, there'd be one issue on a ballot. I'm not sure how the charter and all this stuff works. I'm not a lawyer. I only play one on TV. But maybe you can explain to us, are you anticipating any legal challenges to this because of so many different things that are in this charter amendment?
So I'm also not an attorney. But however, we did work with very good attorneys who have done that analysis. We won't know if there's a challenge until one comes, but based on our legal analysis from the attorneys we work with, we are in good standing.
Okay, let me come back here. I'm pressing all the buttons myself today. One last quick question here that I wanted to just follow up with you on. That when we talk about tracking homelessness and data and information, and I always like to remind our viewing audience that homelessness or unsheltered is a very broad umbrella here. And, it seems that a lot of times people in Seattle only care about the homelessness that they can see with their eyes. But, there's a lot of people who are couch surfing who are also homeless. There's a lot of people who live in their car, that are also homeless. And I think that people tend to forget about that. And they just think, the person who's living underneath an underpass or who's living in a tent in their local park. But this is a very broad and encompassing issue. But for the people that are experiencing homelessness, probably on the lowest levels, name and ID and all those things aren't really required to get services, right? And if it's not required, doesn't that presents a difficulty in being able to track a person and track their progress and everything else? How do you guys plan to move around that or find a solution, or you'll find yourself facing the same issues that the city of Seattle has right now, where it's fragmented data because they have issues tracking people because the law says that they don't have to give their name, to get some of these services?
The law says they don't have to give their name, but the law does not, stop them from giving their name. And so we are, absolutely believe that, if we're going to create a pathway for Omari, it needs to be based on your needs, your skill set, your experiences. And so it's really very important that we can get to a point where people feel the trust that the system can actually help them, that they want to participate in it. And that is why we worked with these providers to build a robust offering so that we are moving away from forcing people to leave to people wanting to come inside, because what we are offering is better than what's on the street. And that is what the work that we did with these different, social service providers, based on their experience and know-how, is to really create a situation where what we're offering is better than the streets, and that it's appropriate for the individual. And so, yes, we have to work within the state law. That's simply the fact. But as we've seen this past year with Just Care and other entities, when we are doing individualized approaches that are offering something meaningful, people are accepting it. And that's what's been missing here, is that meaningful, robust offer of services.
All right. Well, man, I didn't realize that. I mean, this is a good long conversation. Yeah. We could keep going. Are you going to make sure and come back and keep this discussion going with us, Erin?
Anytime. I'm happy to come back, and I can bring some other folks from our group as well.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Erin Goodman from Compassion Seattle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Erin.
All right. So.
Answer some hard questions.
Good discussion.
It's a lot, because we know homelessness is multi-layered.
No,
and ultimately, we talk about it on this show all the time, that there's all this money being thrown at it. I mean, clearly Compassion Seattle has been thinking about it in a wide range of realms, but great to hear that they have going on.
It's the first thing is that it's just good no matter what. Whether our viewer might be for Compassion Seattle or against, this is good to see somebody doing something. There's a lot of pontificating in this city. It's a lot of people with a lot of puffery and a lot of comments of this and that, but they're not willing to actually try and do something. So, I'll acknowledge that okay, they're trying. There's a group of people that, they all have an existing relationship. And that's why I think that, I'm going to keep pressing over here around different advocacy groups that aren't or outside of that existing relationship with a lot of the anchor organizations that are in Compassion Seattle. And also want to make sure that it's compassionate. And I'm not saying that it's not, I'm not inferring that, but I'm saying, if that's a big, heavy name to throw out there, a word to throw out there is compassion. And this is a humanity network over here. So humanity and compassion. Hey. So we need to check on it. But the other thing is they try to split the difference, and we'll see how well that's going to work for them, because they try to put something in there that's going to make everybody happy. Try to put something in there for people who want to reclaim the parks. Try to put something in there for people who hey, we need to invest, get people off the streets and some of everything else. And we'll see what the voters say. This is actually a charter amendment. Is basically an amendment to the city's constitution, but it's not a constitution because it's a city. It's called a charter. And this would become the law of the city.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I think she said in that regard too was that it's kind of a both and approach. I think when we first heard this language, immediately I was thinking, oh man, are they just trying to sweep people up and, make sure businesses have, clean streets and parks have clean streets. But one of the things that Erin, responded to in particular was, this is really a both and. So it is about doing that, but it's also about making sure that these folks have shelter and things like that. And I think that that's really important when we talk about, for me, from a community perspective. Yeah, if we got a lot of Black folks on the ground, on the streets, living on the streets, well, what are we doing for them? And how is it going to really change their lived experience? And I think that, it's important to understand where they were coming from in that regard.
I spoke to the director of regional homelessness, the new authority that's out there, and I'm forgetting their name right now. But what they said because I ask everybody the same question. And so that was the first availability for the regional homeless the director, the first media availability. So I was on the call. I asked everybody, like I said, this 30% rate, this disproportional rate of Black homeless people. And he said, look, I want to be clear. Yes, my job is to deal with people once they're on the street or homeless. But you know what? For this to be effective, we need to address the issues before people. What is driving people here? You know what I'm saying? Is it rent? Is it displacement? Is it lack of access to jobs? You know what I'm saying? Is it like they talk about, issues in foster care and X, Y, and Z? He said once they've reached the regional homeless authority's office, you see what I'm saying? Then yeah, they're dealing with people the best they can. But even he was saying that the very best approach is to find these causes and to go upstream. That's also something that we heard Mayor Durkin talk about as well, is that a lot of these causations are very far upstream. And I mean, Compassion Seattle, they have some upstream programming as well. I think everybody kind of realizes that, but we won't really stop a lot of the homeless issues here until we look at a lot of the issues of why people are becoming homeless. And again, reminding people that the people that you see in a tent, yes, great. But you got to remember, there's a lot of people that are living in their cars who have been, couldn't pay the rent. They've been moved out. They didn't have a job. They couldn't whatever. They're homeless as well. They might not be considered an eyesore to some people, but they're also experiencing homelessness.
Well, I think you're so right. Oh, and really, we can't forget about the couch surfers. I mean, there is a multi-pronged approach that needs to be taken. And I think you're absolutely right, because it has to be a holistic approach. That's why looking at the upstream is so important. That's why ensuring that people have livable wage income. This city has just become very hard to live in. And that's one of those major issues that has to be looked at from a wide stream of ways. So I'm glad that, the mayor is saying that. I'm glad that they are saying that. It's important.
All right, man. Clearly, we're going to have to come back to homelessness. We talked our way all the way through to the top of the hour. Man, we got to hurry up and get out of here. Any last words for anybody? Man,
you guys know that as we were just talking about an issue here with homelessness, I'm going to encourage you to find yourself as a part of the solution. It's important because it takes all of our brilliance to really make this change. I'm glad to see people are stepping up to fill these voids. Let's find a way for you to do that as well out there.
All right, good stuff. Today is Thursday, huh?
Yeah, and Earth Day too. Just happy Earth Day again to everybody.
Happy Earth Day. So Thursday means it's 7:00 tonight. Clapback Culture, Julia Jesse and Mike Davis. And man, I can only imagine what they're going to talk about tonight, considering everything or everything that's happened this week. You want to make sure and catch Clapback Culture tonight at 7:00. Mike Davis, Julia Jesse, anywhere you're watching the Morning Update show. I think that's kind of it for me today. So in that case, want to remind everybody to please go forward in your purpose, go forward in your humanity. And until tomorrow at 11 a.m., peace. See, I got to press the button.
Lift every voice and sing, dealer than heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us.
rising sun.